What is the closest you've ever come to death? Childbirth with my third son. Massive postpartum hemorrhage. I closed my eyes fully expecting not to wake up again. I was filming a piece about guys who hand paint huge billboard ads on sides of buildings in Nick. We were on one rooftop, about 20 stories up, and they were on a scaffolding pulley painting the adjacent building that was taller, but literally touched the building I was on, if that makes sense. Anyway, I wasn't thinking, pointing my camera up at them as I walked backwards. For some reason, I stopped walking just as I was about to walk backwards off the edge of the rooftop. I cheated death by half a step. It was my wedding day. We were getting married in Cape Dior in Nova Scotia. I couldn't sleep, and I was up early, around 6 a.m., and decided to walk the grounds at the BB, which also served as a lighthouse to determine the best place to exchange vows. I was all alone as my husband was sleeping soundly. The tide was coming in. The sun was rising. It was beautiful. Keep in mind, this is backwoods Nova Scotia. There's no guardrails between the nice grassy bluffs and sheer cliffs that plummet hundreds of feet into the ocean with jagged rocks. The grass was covered in the morning dew, and as I walked towards the main point of the land, I slipped. I landed on my back and started slipping. I did what I thought was reasonable and flipped onto my stomach and tried to get as much surface area with the grass as I could. Down and down I slipped, and finally, after what felt like ages, I came to a stop. I looked up, and very carefully crawled up the hill. I was literal inches from going over the cliffs. Any more speed and I would have been toast. And no one would have known, for a while, until they found my body. I didn't tell my now spouse until we were safely back at home. I had a heart attack and died for a very short while on the operating table Wednesday morning. I'm home and feeling much better now though. Ovarian cancer. Had it 6 months ago, had no clue tumor was the size of a large mango. Had surgery to remove all the lady bits September 29th. Oncologist said if I wouldn't have found it when I did, I would have been dead in a few months. My cat jumped on my tumor. Didn't know it was a tumor at the time, and made it hurt, and after a few months of pain I went to the doctor and it was discovered I had a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Before they rolled me into emergency surgery, I think I was in and out of consciousness. I vaguely remembered that my doctor was pissed because I didn't have any fluids. I also remember hearing her say at some point, "This woman has a belly full of blood." It's happened to me a couple of times. The first was when I was 16, I traveled to Africa and lived there for 3 months. I came down with malaria and for some reason, it nearly killed me. I returned home approx 120 pounds and dehydrated, was in the hospital starting the next day and was there for about a week. If I had stayed in Africa much longer, I doubt I would have made it. The second time, I was setting up warehouse racks in a warehouse similar racking to Costco and was sitting atop the rack waiting for my coworker to use the forklift and bring cross pieces up. He forgot to lower the forks when pulling away and pulled the entire rack down with me on top. I fell 14 feet to the concrete floor below, landing flat on my back between two big pieces of machinery. I ended up with an elbow swollen the size of a baseball and some bruises, but that was it. Anorexia nervosa. In my mid-20s I developed it. I only sought help after I fainted in the bathroom and hit my head on the bathtub, and my partner at the time said I had to be checked for a coma. When I went, they asked what I had eaten, and that day it was a single bite of an apple. They weighed me and got me a recovery team. My dietitian said I looked like a cancer patient when I first came in. I had no idea. I could only focus on what I thought was fat. I would have died if I hadn't fainted like that. I have agoraphobia, except I could go to work and was recently diagnosed with ASD level 2, meaning I likely wouldn't have been able to seek help without someone else prompting it. It's been almost 9 years since I've recovered now, and am proud of that. I was run off the road by a semi-truck. My Honda CR-V flipped about 5 times. I was absolutely certain it was the end. I just closed my eyes and prayed to God to make it quick. When the car came to rest on its side, I opened my eyes, wiggled my fingers and toes and realized I was fine. At that moment 2 good Samaritans appeared at my sunroof and pulled me out. The semi-truck kept going. I was picking the cornfield and my overshirt got caught on the belt auger thingy. One worker noticed and shouted to the driver to cut the belt motor, but he couldn't hear him until the last second. I ended up with only mild bruising on my hands and on my stomach in a spiral pattern where the shirt was bunching up, but a few seconds later and it would have been bad. Got hit by a car a few months ago. Got lucky as fuck. When I was a kid 11, I saw a bunch of ducks on a frozen body of water. I wanted to get up close so I went on the water, got towards the middle where the ice gave out and I fell inside. Turns out, there was quite the current under that pretty thin layer of ice and it dragged me along while I desperately clawed at chunks of ice to stay afloat. All the while, my stepbrother at the time stood on shore kinda laughing at the whole situation. Luckily I eventually managed to grab onto something steady enough to pull myself out of the freezing water, where I promptly walked back home in the frigid Canadian weather. Got home, told my mom what happened, and nearly died a second time that day. I was living in a house midwinter and we couldn't pay the electric bill. It was below 0 ton outside, and even colder inside. I didn't even notice my core temperature was lower than normal until my teachers raised concern over me shivering through the entire 8-hour school day. I felt warm, I just couldn't stop shaking. When I was 15, I was at my friend's house in the country dirt roads and we were planning on going somewhere with her parents. They hopped in their huge-ass truck and pretended to leave me behind, so I started running next to the truck on this very sandyish dirt road when I lost my footing and went under the truck, right in the path of the tires. Luckily they saw me and stopped immediately or I would have been crushed. As a kid, I was swimming in a river after heavy rain. We were upstream from a man-made ford that had 6 large, evenly spaced pipes underneath for the river to flow through. The river surface was only just below the top of the ford, so the flow pipes were almost invisible. I drifted downstream to get out on the ford, and as I approached, the current suddenly sucked me feet first into the pipe. I shot my arms out to the sides, and my underarms caught on the rim of the pipe. I got my face out of the water enough to scream for help. My friends and the random adult rushed over and managed to pull me out. TL, doctor, I almost got sucked down a large flow pipe while swimming in a river. I'm glad you all like this post so much, I got another one to add. I was working for my buddy's dad cleaning chimneys in NYC, cool job. Wednesday set up scaffolding on the roof of a building to install a flue. It was the end of the day and I was tired. When taking it down, the scaffolding was rusty, I couldn't get the part off so I just heaved and the thing popped off like a champagne cork. I stumbled backwards 1 step and then 2, sure enough I caught my balance. Behind me was a 5-story drop right off the building. My boss and I locked eyes for 3 seconds, which felt like 100, when he said, "Hand it to me, let's get out of here."